Hello and welcome to Manufacturing.net's Security Breach. I'm Jeff Ranke, and today I'm joined by Thierry Aubry, a sales executive at Open Systems. Open Systems is a leading provider of cloud-delivered security solutions that the company says are easier to deploy while providing a higher level of protection. Open Systems recently offered a look inside a phishing scheme and potential malware attack experienced by one of their customers. While this global manufacturer of home and commercial appliances will remain anonymous, Thierry will walk us through how the attack was instigated, how Open Systems was able to respond, and what steps you can take to avoid and respond to potential attacks against your systems and proprietary data. Thierry, maybe to get things started, you can tell us a little bit about the situation in terms of the customer and in your relationship to them and how you guys started working together.
Yes, thanks for the question, Jeff. So basically, we're working here with a global manufacturer, roughly 10,000 employees at 80 locations worldwide, producer of appliances for home and commercial use, and we'll call them Grumbach for today's conversation. And Open Systems has been working with them for several years now, doing managed detection response since early 2021. On the basis of Microsoft Defender and Sentinel and network detection response.
So could you tell us a little bit about, I think that term might be new to some folks watching this, a managed detection and response service provider. What exactly does that entail?
So basically when we discuss that with customers, it's a managed SOC essentially. So Open Systems providing resources to look at all the alerts, the logs, and the security tools from the customers, managing that for them 24/7, and then alerting the customer whenever something suspicious arises. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it definitely makes sense, kind of leading into the case study that we want to talk about. So starting with that, and the case study, by the way, it's going to be posted on the same page as this video so people can get a good look at all the details as well there. But can you talk about some of the early signs? What were some of the things that tipped you off to something going on here?
Yeah, definitely. So the earliest sign was June 10th, 2021, when Microsoft Defender detected suspicious behavior on the workstation of the Grumbach employee and automatically created a ticket and raised an alert in this Open Systems SOC portal. Then the SOC engineer investigated the problem naturally and rapidly identified the malicious intentions behind the alert, which basically was a PowerShell routine running on the employee's workstation. That was the earliest sign of the attack. And then the engineer found out that this malicious routine was in the recon phase, gathering information about Grumbach's systems in order to mount the primary attack, which usually is what we see. And this recon included identifying the public IP address, host name, administrator ID for the employee workstation, and then potentially moving to other employees and other systems to do even more recon.
Gotcha. So what were some of the things that could have been done with this information? Because it is more personal data. I know in a manufacturing industrial sector, it's always proprietary stuff that we're really focused on. But what could the hacker have potentially done with this type of information?
So basically, the attacker could have tried to find ways how to laterally move within the network and then receive access to areas where there is more OT environment as well. And potentially then also being able to run a ransomware attack, encrypting all the information available or all the data or all the systems, the machines and so on. So essentially they wouldn't be able to, or Grumbach wouldn't be able to use them anymore, which then would have led to obviously not being able to meet production timelines, breaching of SLAs for Grumbach and its customers, resulting in loss of millions ultimately, besides having to pay a potential ransomware. So disastrous if that would have happened.
So it would have started with basically just some very basic personal information and just blowing up from there and gotten into all facets of the company potentially. Wow, that's scary.
Exactly.
So what kind of kicked things off? What got it started? How did this stuff start appearing on the network for the customer?
So it's textbook, right? It's when Open Systems conducted an investigation, we found out that the original point of entry occurred when the Grumbach employee clicked on a malicious link in a phishing mail. And basically the email perpetrated to be from the Federal Customs Office, and he claimed that the customer was holding a package for the employee at the border. And he was instructed to then click the malicious link in order to resolve the issue. Now you'd imagine phishing email, we all know about it. But so this attacker went even a step further and called the employee receiving that said email and told him, claiming to be from the customs, informing him to email and again instruct him to click the link in the email, which is quite sophisticated. And one can wonder, because the employee actually was expecting a package from abroad. So if this was just a coincidence or actually very well researched.
That's incredible, and also equal parts very frightening. Do you think they could have gotten some of that information, expecting that package coming in? Could that have been the early part of the attack and sort of getting some of that data and then using it?
That could have definitely been a case. And this just tells us that prevention is not everything, right? You need to be able to detect and then also respond to such attacks.
You did talk about what you had done to find the threat, but I guess what I want to talk a little bit about is what are some of all this was done beforehand. It was sort of a preventive steps that were taken. Maybe you can walk people through a little bit of what that was like and why this customer was not impacted as badly as they could have been because of what was in place.
So basically, what was really the key benefit here of the customer is that they had systems in place, first of all, on the endpoint detection response solution to be able to actually understand if something malicious is happening. And then the second part was being able to have processes in place with open systems, which enable open systems to act very, very quickly. So once it has been identified that there was malicious activity, open systems then went on and detained and contained that threat and isolated the host to prevent it from spreading. And this was crucial in that moment. Now, these processes need to be in place. They need to be practiced beforehand. This is ultimately crucial. And the customer, Grumbach, allowed open systems to take certain measures, preventive measures, before verifying with them. And therefore, you gain the hours you need in order to isolate such an attack.
So really, it was the forethought to be proactive in setting a lot of these things up that allowed the company to react appropriately and quickly, making sure things really didn't spread and get worse. There's a lot to take away. There's a lot to take away from the case study. Thierry, what do you think are some of the big things that, if you're a manufacturer and you look at this situation, what are some of the biggest things you can learn, either from what you need to do internally, employee training, or whatever the case might be?
Very important. So basically, the key takeaways here are, no matter how hard we try to prevent an attack of infiltrating the network or whatever it might be, there's always a way, right? There's social engineering, there are compromised employees. So you can't nowadays 100% rely on that an attack will not get into your systems. And this needs to be very well understood all the way up to the top management. Secondly, therefore, it is crucial to not just have prevention, but as we talked before, also detection, containment, mitigation, and response capabilities within your organization with a partner together. And at Open Systems, we often see that companies are flooded by alerts from their MSSPs or from their SOC providers, and they can't handle it anymore because the alerts are fuzzy, they're not precise, no one knows how to act upon them. And so it is crucial that you only receive outcomes, as we say at Open Systems. So the customer knows exactly how to react on a certain threat. So unlike most security providers who manage a patchwork of potentially misaligned tools and drown customers in those alerts, choose a provider that delivers reliable security outcomes to detect, remediate threats, eliminate vulnerabilities, and harden resilience to attacks. So this is really, really crucial.
It's really getting the right sensitivity in place to understand, so you're not always crying wolf, but yet the red flags are raised when they need to be, like in this situation here.
Exactly.
So Thierry, maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about Open Systems, a little bit of background on the company, and maybe who you work with and some of the things that you specialize in.
Gladly. Thank you very much for the question, Jeff. So Open Systems, 30 years in the business, Swiss company with a very, very strong American presence as well. In the XDR and SASE space, really, really focusing on this managed detection response piece, which we've just talked about. being a mission-driven MDR provider. And what this essentially means is that Open Systems runs security like space missions. So breaching the silo of IT and security for faster detection or for remediation and optimal resilience against attacks. And this just basically means that being able to have repeatable and very reliable missions for the customer, so everyone understands at all times what's happening, where a threat is coming from, and what are the processes to mitigate that threat. Who does Open Systems work for and work with? Basically, the mid-sized companies, mainly in the manufacturing space, which are globally present, which do not have the resource internally to have their own SOC, because essentially it's not their core business, right? Their core business is to produce services or products, and they need someone professional to operate their security.
Yeah. I really appreciate the comment about breaking down those silos between IT and OT. This case study shows how what started as an information technology situation bled right into operations, or definitely could have if the right steps weren't taken. So it's a great point. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Essentially, that's what Open Systems sees in many companies. The challenge, right? That the OT and IT, they talk to each other, and security and IT talk to each other, and sit at a table and look at what can be done to improve the overall security posture. And this is crucial for a successful mitigation of attacks.
Absolutely. So changing gears just a little bit, this had the potential to turn into a ransomware attack. We've seen these more prominently throughout the industrial sector over the last 18 months or so. Got to ask, and we ask everybody who comes on the show this, if your company is involved in a ransomware attack, what is your opinion in terms of paying or not paying, and how do you handle those things?
So this is a very difficult question to answer in that sense. First and foremost, if a company has to consider paying the ransomware, it's because the company was unable to prevent a successful attack and also wasn't able to sufficiently restore its systems. This can have multiple reasons, but also to verify an MDR service can protect companies from successful ransomware attacks throughout early detection, containment, mitigation. But it's still vital for you as a company to take further steps to protect yourself in case something happens. So have a contingency plan, being able to have an incident response plan, and also ultimately have that rehearsed before it actually happens. So you know step by step, what will we be doing once we're affected by such a ransomware attack?
Absolutely. Thierry, the other thing, when we look at the industrial sector, it's my last question for you here. We've got folks who are just starting to dip their toe. They understand the importance of cybersecurity and doing more. And then we've also got a group that are sort of midway through the process. They've handled a lot of the low-hanging fruit, but they need to take the next step. Regardless of what situation you're in there, what advice might you have for the industrial sector in beefing up their cybersecurity priorities and platforms?
Thanks, Jess. So being able to do less is sometimes more. Don't go in and try to do everything at once. Open Systems has seen that fail with many customers. Identify your crown jewels, as we call them, and then see how best to protect them. And from there, you go further, right? You can always get the last % at the end of your journey. But first and foremost, protect your users, protect your endpoints, protect your network, and then venture out to other options out there. Understand which security solutions you already have in place and what do they offer, what do they produce on logs, what is out there, how do they play together, what processes you have internally to actually act upon if something is happening. And then seek out a partner who can support you with experience with similar companies in similar industries, knowing what they're talking about.
Thanks, Thierry. And for more information about Open Systems, you can check them out at open-systems.com. For Thierry Aubry, I'm Jeff Ranke, and thanks for watching Manufacturing.net's Security Breach.